So let's get into our next topic. It is traditional weddings. And
I got a question.
are modern weddings too secular? That is the question that we want to answer. So, initial thoughts. Go, guys.
I think
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think they lack like what word am I looking for?
me.
I think they lack individualism, I think.
Expound.
So, for example, a lot of the weddings that we've been to, although beautiful, I think a lot of them kind of
Oh, we're by the same script.
yes.
Okay, I see
There's
what you're saying.
like there's very few that had like their own vows, or very few that expressed like their love for Christ in a lot of them.
Now, we're talking mainly about the ceremony.
Yeah, I'm talking about the ceremony.
Yeah, mainly about the ceremony. Like the reception generally has, different little twists and
Elements.
turns and elements.
Yeah.
But the ceremonies have been typically 1, 2, 3. Now, I
Yeah,
think,
very quick.
in my quick opinion, I think that there's not enough focus ceremonially on propping it's almost like, okay, y'all are getting married, good for y'all, show the love, release
Bye.
y'all out into the wild.
Yes.
When the ceremony and the symbols in the ceremony need to be more about, okay, this couple is coming together, but it's not just the joining of this couple, it's the joining of this community. These families are coming together, and how are these families going to support this couple to make sure that they stay strong, and how are these two families going to support each other, because now that they are essentially becoming one body at the same time. And I think that gets us into the wedding that we went to this past Thursday, right? It was
It's
my
beautiful.
it was my
It was a
cousin's
beautiful
wedding,
ceremony.
and it was a beautiful ceremony. Now I will say it was one of the longer ceremonies you're going to go to. Most ceremonies we go to are
Very quick.
20,
10 minutes.
10 to 20 minutes.
ceremonies.
Yes.
10,
Yeah.
20 minutes cocktail hour,
Yeah.
or 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been to a couple
Or all
weddings.
night.
Yeah, we've been to a couple weddings where it's like the ceremony ended, and then it's like we're waiting like 2 hours. And I get it. You got to take pictures, and sometimes the bride changes and all that. But it's like, come on, like get your stuff
Ooh,
together.
yeah.
The people want to party.
Yeah.
And so we're taking all this information in from the now 9 weddings that we've been to.
Yep, 9.
9 weddings that we've been to in the last 2 years.
I'm loving all the love,
to
though.
make sure that to make sure that our wedding goes, one, that it's uniquely us, but 2, that we represent not only our love, but the love of Christ that is uniting us, and the love of our two families and how they are going to support us too. And so let's talk about that, the wedding that we went to, some of the characteristics and elements of the ceremony that you did like.
Oh, I loved the pastor that they had. I loved how the worship music that they played, like it was all like instruments and like a band and things like that. And also your cousin's wife, her family is like Polish. So she had like someone from Poland read 1 Corinthians 13
Cool.
in
Yeah.
Poland, in Polish.
Yeah.
In Polish. So that was really cool to hear.
Yeah, it was funny. My brother was like, "Man, I thought that lady was speaking in tongues." I was like, "She was." It's like that's a different. It's a
Yeah,
it's
actually,
literally
yes.
a different tongue. So
Literally.
it's like,
True, yeah.
It's like, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just like hearing the instruments, just hearing people sing along with the songs, it just felt like a little piece of heaven, honestly. I was like,
Yeah, well, and
beautiful.
the biggest thing with how the worship part of the ceremony was the instruments and the music didn't overshadow the voices.
Yes.
And
Wow.
so, yeah, you had people on the microphones, but everybody in the building was singing. And so it was like this angelic,
Yes,
Oh
it was
my
harmonious,
God.
just, yeah, and it felt very powerful and uplifting, and as opposed to like, okay, we're just jamming out in like a normal Sunday service, like that
Right.
that felt like almost true authentic worship, because
Yes.
everybody was singing and you can hear everybody's voice, and it sounded as one. and it was just really beautiful. And then
Yeah.
you had, like you said, you had this violinist, you had a
Oh. Yes,
keyboardist,
it was so great.
and so it was just beautiful because the music wasn't the focal point. It was the worship and the voices to God.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
And
And
something-
it was surrounding that couple in
Yeah.
that moment, which was also very cool. Good.
Yeah, and like two other things that I thought were cool was one, like towards after they said I do, I think it was, the parents came up and like prayed with them, like prayed over them. And then
So it was specifically the patriarchs of
Yes.
each side. So her
dad.
Yeah, her dad, and then my grandfather, because my cousin's father unfortunately has passed away. And so my grandfather stepped up and did the prayer on that side. But that was cool. And that's not something that's necessarily something you see all the time.
Yeah.
That's super traditional, that's
No.
ingrained in ceremonies, but I think it's necessary and an awesome display of not only just it's a good symbol, but it's a good way to kick off a marriage rather than just saying I
Wow.
do, kiss, and then
Peace
let's go
out.
party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, yeah, let's have fun, let's party. Like Jesus turned the water into wine, and
Of course.
yeah, and he saved the best wine for last.
So let's remember why
But,
we're doing this.
yeah, let's
Exactly.
remember
I
why we are
love
here.
it.
Yeah. So the last thing that I thought was really cool was like in the program, it said like the reason why they're starting out with worship, which was to bring glory to God. And because he's the author of
Wow.
love, he's the one that even created love. So I thought that was really cool that they did that.
That's awesome. So I am going to say modern weddings are too secular. I had to think about it a little bit because I had to think about the weddings I've seen and experienced myself. But I will say they're too secular because these days the foundation of the marriage itself is no longer surrounded by God. And so when going to the wedding, it's more about the showmanship and the entertainment
Yeah.
and the beauty of it all and not really the depth of why they're there in the first place. And so I see things like, them smoking weed at the altar or like
What is that gonna
It's
do?
like-
yeah.
Not
Have
sacred.
y'all ever seen that?
No.
I've seen that a couple times. And like
Like
or
in person?
yeah, like they'll like have a blunt
Jesus
like at the
Christ.
altar, like next to the rings or something, like as they And so I'll see things like that, or I'll see like, really and like the wedding dresses are just so
Scandalous.
yeah. And it's like not to put any woman down for a wedding dress, but it's like at the same time it's like what are you trying to represent here? Like why are you doing this kind of? Like what's your reasoning and your intent behind doing this? And so I will say a lot of them
Yeah,
are
because
way
like
too
you're
secular.
getting married, like
yeah.
the wedding dress should be. I mean, you can
Beautiful
yeah,
and
beautiful,
fit
and
your
you can,
body,
yeah, you
absolutely.
can show off like your who God's made you to be,
Right.
But ultimately, like
a lot of
your
them are, like-
body is for the person that
Yeah.
you were actually giving it to,
Yeah.
in the ceremony.
it's
It's not to
interesting.
be lusted after
Yeah.
by everybody else.
And that's what I was
going-
feeling when looking at a lot of these wedding dresses. Like, oh, I'm really looking at your body.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
that's where my eyes go first.
Yeah. Now, lust is also not on the person who's wearing the stuff, but if
Mm-hmm.
you are intentionally like, oh, I'm about to show this off in my
Yeah.
wedding dress.
Yeah.
Like, I'm about to show off this body. Everybody's going to be looking at this.
Yes. And that's why I said
that's
it's about the
problem.
intent, because it's like, of course, you can't control how a person looks at you. At the same time,
Right.
you do have a responsibility to yourself of how you are represented when you walk out the door and whatever you're wearing, whatever
Exactly.
you're doing,
Yeah.
things like that. And so especially with your wedding day and seeing all these wedding dresses and how scandalous they are and immodest, and I'm like, wow, like at the same time, I'm all for, showing your curves and all that. You are a woman after all, but at the same time, it's like, what are you exactly doing here?
Yeah.
So
We're going to have to find some wedding videos to react to. We're going to have to make
I
that
know.
like,
Oh,
a segment.
there's
Yeah.
a few that went viral like last year. I think
But it's
can't remember.
interesting that like how you say all of that is, and I think it's representative of culture today, how it's like
Yes.
degenerating. So just as marriages and weddings are degenerating. So it's the culture and society. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Miss Max says, show the body to your man, not for everyone to see.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's what it's there for.
Exactly.
Because what you say I do, that's all his.
Exactly.
That's all his.
Your body doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
Y'all are one.
Hot take for some of y'all.
Vice versa.
Vice
too.
versa. Yep.
So yeah, that is funny. That is funny. But yeah, the traditional weddings I thought are, and it really just took us going to one to be like, whoa, maybe the way these weddings have been conducted has been a little shallow. Now I will say we did go to one of my baseball buddies and his wedding in a church that his parents or her parents, one of the two, got married in, but their pastor did a phenomenal job of telling their story. And so that was wrapped in the ceremony. So I'm not saying that every wedding that we've been to has been like, the shallow cookie cutter
Right, for sure.
printed out thing. I'm just saying the thread through them all is like, hey, like the ceremony's really quick. And
lack of depth, I guess.
Yeah, lack of depth and lack of like this uplifting of not only the couple but of the family and this, and just like, because when you're there at a wedding as a witness, you're saying that, hey, I'm here to witness these two get married and also to hold them accountable going forward in the future. Like that's the ultimate purpose. Like you don't just invite people to a wedding to party with you. You invite them to be a witness to the union of the love that you two have, but also to help you in your journey as you are married, because those are the people that are supposed to be closest to you that you can lean on. And so that's also why you should also probably watch who you invite to your wedding too. Don't just invite people just because, oh, like I knew her back in the day and she's fun.
Agreed.
It's like, no, like let's think about this in a bigger way. Like you want to have a party, like, get back from your honeymoon and then have a party like, oh, we're married, we're together, we're throwing a house party. Yeah, that's fine. But like the marriage, I think, needs to be taken more seriously. And I think perhaps, then you'll see marriages start lasting longer, lasting for an eternity. Because I think the way we do weddings is indicative of the quality of how the relationship lasts. And a lot of them aren't lasting very long.
I agree.
So, or they ultimately unravel, even if they do last a significant amount of time. So, I mean, yeah, here's our last sip. And it is, wedding should symbolize how the couple will remain bonded for eternity and how the closest witnesses will support. But that's just what we think. We want to know what you think. We only got a couple more segments left. When we come back, we are going to talk about unemployment staying the same, even though the U.S. added 260,000 jobs. Stay tuned.